This was my most anticipated release of 2023. You're just reading it like thinking like, what the heck is going on here? Like, why am I here? Of course, we have to talk about her demon husband. I was just a little bit bored with her. Point up for the demon guy who's a knob, but I like him anyway. I expected it to be better. What's up guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be reviewing and kind of got a mini vlog thrown in there of my most anticipated book of 2023. This is a book that's coming out, I believe, it might have already come out or it might be today. Let me just double check because I know they changed the time or the date that it was coming out. It's a little bit earlier than expected. So it's saying on the Waterstones website it is the 2nd of March, but I feel like for some reason it was brought into February, so it might already be out yet. Not 100% sure. I will put the exact date down like here, it'll pop up here probably. But this was my most anticipated release of 2023. I was lucky enough to get a proof of this book before it came out. Thank you very much to the publishers who sent it to me. It was honestly one of the best parcels I've ever received in my life because I love Shannon Chakraborty. Her Daybad series, I talk about it quite a lot. It's one of my all-time favorite trilogies. I have to reread it, I feel like now, but it was such a good series. It's probably what got me truly in love with kind of adult fiction. It's a kind of crossover between YA and adult fiction, I would say, but it did kind of bring me into that more adult, kind of more highly political, just slightly higher tension, I don't know, slightly more complicated storylines that kind of tend to come along with adult fantasy, and I just loved it. So it holds a dear place in my heart. So I was very excited for this book, and the premise sounded phenomenal. Just as a little overview of what this book is about before I go into some small clips of me reading it and then back to kind of me reviewing the book. It's a little bit choppy and changey, I know, but I don't know. I didn't really think through how I was doing this video, so there we go. But hopefully you'll be able to see through my opinions and what I'm saying and be able to get whether or not you'd actually enjoy this book, as I'm going to try and explain why I didn't like it without giving any spoilers, but also in a way that will hopefully mean that you can judge for yourself whether the things that I'm talking about are things that you'll also like or dislike. So as I said, we have a very strong female character as our main character, Amina. We start the book in a place that I didn't expect to begin in. We start in a place where she is retired. She's no longer this scandalous pirate. She's kind of put it behind her. She's now a very pious, or trying to be a very pious Muslim woman who's trying to raise her daughter in a very quiet life. She's got her mother to look after. Her brother is mentioned as kind of building his own life. You know, piracy is not something she wants to be involved in right now. She does, however, still kind of have a longing for that adventure, that constantly moving, being on the road, the kind of things that come along with being a pirate. Then a mysterious woman turns up to her door and says that she is the mother of one of her old crew members who died. And we kind of get the hint that he's the reason she kind of gave up piracy, or it's something to do with him that happened. So she's very kind of hesitant and wary of this woman, but then is told that the woman's granddaughter, so her crew member's daughter, has actually been kidnapped and she needs Amina's help to get her back from the Franks who have come over and taken her. Amina then reluctantly agrees for a large sum of money as well. She kind of is tantalized by the money. She could set her whole family up with that and have more to spare. So she decides reluctantly to do this, and she kind of goes, it's like kind of like a heist. She gets a crew together, her old crew, she travels around, picks them up, and then they go and try and find this kidnapped girl. I'm going to put in the clips, I think, now of me reading this book, and then once that's done, we'll come back and I'll kind of have my cohesive final thoughts of this book. So, see you in 2 seconds. It's not looking good, guys. It's not looking good. This is not going well. We are 58 pages in, and I'm not enjoying it. It's not going well. There was talks of DNFing, to be honest. It got to that point. So there's a few things I'd like to say. First is that we've got this strange prologue that's told from us by a narrator who has sat and been told Amina's story, right? And he's now documenting it. But then it goes into the first chapter and it said it's from first person. So it's her telling the story, and he's literally just writing word from word. But apparently he interrupts her at certain points, so you get these weird moments where she clearly answers his question that he's asked, but not in a way that adds anything to the story. She's just saying like, oh, don't interrupt me, I'm talking here, and then carries on. So like it just kind of like interrupts the story. It doesn't add anything to the story, it just like throws you off for a second. Then we've got a really like weird first chapter from the actual book, so not the prologue bit, the first chapter of the actual book, that doesn't seem to have any relation to the rest of the story so far. It's just her on a boat with a bunch of guys that maybe or maybe not have like woken some kind of demon in a lake or the sea or something, but that seemed to have just been to like introduce her as a character, which was, I feel like, not the best choice. I'm being over picky there, I think, though, to be fair. I'm thinking that could come back around, so it's okay, that could come back around. But the next thing is that it doesn't live up to my expectations of what the story was going to be, which is not necessarily, it kind of is, because I'm hoping that changes, because on the back, the little like slogan we've got is smuggler, pirate, blasphemer, who was too ambitious, too violent, and utterly inappropriate. So in my head, I've got these kind of like ruckus, morally grey characters, you know, that are kind of rough around the edges, they swear a lot, you know, all that kind of thing. Whereas we're joining Amina in a point in her life where she's not that anymore. She's had that apparently in her past, because it's told us a lot. Not shown any of it though, which is the bit I'd like to see. You know, I'd like some description of actually seeing it rather than just being told a lot of it. But she's actually incredibly religious now, so there's a lot of talk of religion, like there's entire quotations of passages from the Quran she finishes every sentence of with like sayings about God and things like that. So it's very religious, which it keeps throwing me every time it's mentioned, because it doesn't fit with the character that I expected her to be. This sounds probably bad, I would rather see this blasphemous, morally grey character who did all these things apparently in her past and all these adventures than this person right now, because she doesn't interest me right now. I'm not interested in her at all. And then the second thing is that there's sections of it that read like a history book, because I was talking for this, I'm also reading this with a friend, and we were both like not interested in it, and we were trying to figure out why we did not care right now. And I was saying it was because everything is told to us, like we're not shown any of this past that apparently she has. This whole 58 pages has just been her kind of reminiscing about this dangerous past that she had, why she's now like having to go into like hiding because of this dangerous past that we know nothing about, but it's a dangerous past. And then there's these random passages kind of setting the scene, but they read like historically accurate kind of like textbooks. If you want those bits of history in your book, that's great, but I would rather be in that moment, be in it, your character in it, rather than telling us about it. Does that make sense? It was just a lot of telling, not a lot of showing, so I'm not really bothered. Bit harsh, I know, but that's what it is. So yeah, it's not going great. I'm a bit disappointed so far, and I'm devastated at the minute, but I'm hoping it will get better very soon. She's about to leave to go on this adventure that we've been promised, so I'm hoping this now matches up with the character that I was expecting when I picked this up. Whether or not but then I think that would also now be wrong, because she is this pious, very religious, devout person. If she then revolted back to this like blasphemous pirate, it doesn't make sense now anymore. I don't know, we'll see. I'm gonna keep going. It's my most anticipated release of the year, it can't be bad. Let's do an update. I'm on 150 pages, so I read about 100 pages more than when I last spoke to you, and it has got better. Not as good as I was hoping it to, but it's got better. Well, she's now not firmly on the adventure, but she's kind of getting her crew together. So we've met some of her old crew members. They're kind of like fun, and seeing them together brings out a kind of different, just brings a little bit more of a fun kind of element to it. I'm now thinking that the issue with it is that it's in first person, and a lot of it, I think, I prefer books in third person. I think it's so much easier to write description without it coming across as like weird when it's in third person, because if someone's speaking in first and then they suddenly just describe the scene, it's hard to do it well, I think, in first person, and it often comes across as a bit telly, because they're literally telling you instead of like kind of it just being a description, if that makes sense. I don't know. There was a certain passage in it that I kind of felt that vibe, like it was kind of just like her reading off a list of things rather than just a kind of nice description of something that's setting the scene. So I think that's part of it as well, that it's first person and I prefer third. But that's fine. We're getting used to it, which I think was my big issue, that it was a shock to the system and not as I expected it. But we're getting used to it, so I think it's getting better. So I have hopes that it will improve. I can't remember which bit I was at now, so I have no idea what's going to go down. I'm more hopeful than I was last time I spoke to you, basically. So we'll keep reading and we'll see how it goes. So I'm quite a bit further on in the book than when I last spoke to you. I'm on page 392, so I've got less than 100 pages left. And it has improved. I need to look up the timeline of when this book set compared to City of Brass, because a character from City of Brass has emerged into this book. Not a main character, nothing like that, nothing dramatic, but just a little character, and I really like seeing them, so that made me happy. I can't remember where I was last time we spoke. I think I was about 140 pages in, so I've read a lot since then, and it has improved. I don't know. I just feel like I'm not connected to the main character at all. I find the secondary characters are funner, and she becomes more fun when she's around them, and there's like these like little like bantery bits in it that I really like, that are really fun, which kind of like brings me to remembering City of Brass and more how that book was and the elements of that book that I liked. But apart from that, there's nothing else drawing me through it. The plot's fine, like it is a pirate plot, I suppose, but it's not really, because it's like more about getting someone back rather than them going on like, I don't know, I suppose she hasn't got any drive. Everything she's doing is because someone else has forced her to do it or has told her to do it, which kind of gives the plot a little bit of a lackluster feel to it. Like, the stakes are high, obviously, because the reason she has to do these things is because she's being threatened, but because I don't really particularly care about her as a character yet, I'm not too fussed about that, which maybe sounds very harsh, but it's just the reality. It's kind of just not hitting the mark how I wanted it to. It's not a bad book. I think loads of people will enjoy this a lot, and I think it is enjoyable. Thinking it'll be a 3 or 4 star read, so it's definitely not a bad book. It's just not as good as I wanted it to be. There's just nothing in it that's making me go, yes, I love this. This is brilliant. I don't think I'm even enjoying it as much. I'm reading it with my friend, and she seems to be actually enjoying it a little bit more. There's characters in it that she really likes, but again, I'm just not fussed about them. I'm hoping the ending will bring it back around, but again, it's just nothing's driving her. She's not got any of her own drive, which was what I was kind of really wanting from this pirate book, was her kind of like own gumption and like sense of adventure, which we're being told that she has, and we get little snippets of it, but it's just not part of the main plot. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like this is such a disappointing vlog, but I feel like it's a little bit of a disappointing read, so it kind of reflects that. I don't know. I'm debating whether I even want to buy like a physical copy, because I pre-ordered the physical copy, obviously, and I really love the American edition. I think it's stunning, but I don't know. I think I had such high expectations for this book that it's just not lived up to, and that was probably my own fault, that I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have put that much pressure on this book, but I did, and it never works out well. I'm going to try and finish it now, and I'll let you know my final comprehensive thoughts in a little review after this clip, probably. So I think my first issue with this book was it didn't start where I expected it to. My expectations were we were going to have this scandalous kind of, everyone was kind of going to be like dark, morally grey, dark characters. You know, we were going to have a lot of kind of violence and drinking, kind of ruckusness. I don't know if that's a word, but we're going to go with it. But we didn't. We started in a much more calm, there wasn't much drama. It was very mellow kind of start to the fantasy book. And I wasn't immediately gripped straight away. The introduction itself was strange in how it was written. So this is written by someone telling Amina's story. So Amina is telling this character, and then this character is writing the story because he wants to be a storyteller. I don't like reading books in first person anyway. And the fact that it was then being told by someone being told this and then still written in first person didn't quite sit right. We also had strange moments where Amina then interrupted her story to tell Jamal, who was writing the story, tell him in the present day of like kind of quips about how he should be presenting it, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to say it word for word how you're saying it, so then we know it is word for word Amina, which kind of is, just felt like it was kind of a bit clunky, a bit thrown in there just to make the story narrative, how it was being presented, make sense, which I feel like it didn't need. It was an extra kind of strange twist that we didn't have to have. I would have much preferred Jamal being a character that was telling the story rather than Amina telling Jamal to tell the story. Does that make sense? Like there was an extra layer there we didn't need that kind of overcomplicated it and at moments brought me out of the story a little bit. And I think because it was written in first person narrative, a lot of the time I think it's really hard, for me anyway, to get a connection with that character, because if they're going to be talking about themselves, they're going to sound like an absolute knob to be saying like put bits about their characteristics and stuff. So like I feel like it meant that Amina became quite a two-dimensional character. She was this gumptious, strong woman. I liked that, but it was kind of, that was the only thing going for her, was that she was a mother who needed to do this job as a means to an end. She wasn't really into it any other way. She didn't really laugh or joke with anyone else in the storyline. She was just a bit grumpy the whole time. You know, there was just like kind of, I don't know, I just didn't click with her as a character. I much preferred the secondary characters, which is not always a great thing. I mean, you have to like the secondary characters, but if you prefer reading about them than you do the main character, then I think there's something a little bit amiss there. We were told a lot more than shown as well about this strong side of her. Like, there were moments where we did see it, but more often than not, we were just told that she was this strong female character, especially in her past rather than the present, where she was like law-defying. She smuggled a lot of things, you know, she got away with a lot, and she seemed to be quite gumptious when she was younger, but she's kind of moved away from that as she's got older. As she's given up piracy, she's kind of found God especially, and so that's much more of a priority to her. She has that kind of battle between being good and following the word of God, but also kind of being a pirate and following her desires in that way. So it was kind of just a little bit, I don't know, like, I think it just didn't quite work. That was kind of all that she was about, and I just didn't connect with her with it. I wish we were just seen a little bit more of her strength come through rather than just told about all these things that she did in her past. I just wish it was more of a present. Like, I want to know about those stories. Like, they sound interesting. I want to read about those, just not necessarily where she is now, which probably sounds bad, but I was just a little bit bored with her. The bits when she came through, I think, was when she was interacting with the other characters. So she obviously got her old crew together, and I really liked them. Like, Tinbu was such a funny character. I want to see more of him. His whole story arc on coming back into the fold, how they got him to join the crew, was really, I enjoyed that. That was a very good part of the book. I liked him as a character, and his storyline and his personal relationships I thought were great. I wanted to see more of that. Obviously, it was just a little snippet that we saw. Also, I thought Delilia was great. She is a strong, you do not want to get on the wrong side of her. She is a poisoner who is funny, but also terribly scary. Like, she will just like poison you or like blow you up, or like, she's kind of like a chemist, I suppose, more than a poisoner, because they were like playing around with explosives at this point and kind of inventing those things that's going along, which was quite a cool development in it. She was just a great character. I really like her. I hope we see more of her, especially their relationship in the past. I think that could be quite interesting. And I think Amina's relationship with Majid as well was really great. He's more of a kind of fatherly figure to her, so it's a kind of softer, more comforting relationship than with the other two, and I just enjoyed seeing that because you don't see that a lot in fantasy books. I think that kind of paternal relationship. He's the navigator of the journey, and I just enjoyed their relationship. So that was good. I enjoyed those aspects of it. Of course, we have to talk about her demon husband. So she is previously married to a man, and this guy is a bit of a knob, I'm not gonna lie. He is not a very nice person, but he's really funny to read about. He brought a kind of a fresh life to the page that was kind of lacking in a lot of the stages. I think because I found Amina quite dry to read. He was just the complete opposite and kind of just spiced things up a little bit. So he was he was backstabbing, a bit of a coward, very much a coward, a wuss. Even though he's like a magical character, he was like not helpful at all, and just was like just there to stir things up basically. But he was great. I really enjoyed him, so I do hope we see more of him. So yeah, he just added a little bit of humor that was lacking in other aspects, and I appreciated that a lot. So point up for the demon guy who's a knob, but I like him anyway. So that kind of leads me on to the magic in this world. It was a little bit hit and miss with me. So we are actually set, I believe, in the same world as City of Brass. Obviously, City of Brass is kind of encapsulated in a second dimension. It's kind of a portal fantasy. You know, you cross this river and you get to the City of Brass, and only people with magic can get into that city. So it's very self-contained, even though it is technically in the world. Kind of like Hogwarts is in Harry Potter, you know. It's in England, but it's in a contained area that normal people can't get to or wouldn't be aware of. This, however, obviously took place where people might believe that magic is real, but it's more of like a folklore that people aren't certain about. However, as the story progresses, obviously there are things that turn out, obviously magic is real. It kind of a lot of the time felt a little bit like item magic, like people had to find items be magical, or that was a goal of some characters. I'm like a huge fan of that one. I think it kind of mitigates the whole essence of the magic. And then obviously we've got magical creatures as well in there that were much more exciting, kind of like they kind of spiced it up a little bit. I was more interested in them. And we had a slight crossover of a minor character from the City of Brass trilogy, which was very excited to read about. I love that bit. Obviously, you don't have to read City of Brass to read this, but this character obviously came up in both, so that was exciting to see, and I did enjoy that aspect of it. It's always nice when you see a character from another book in another series. I always like it anyway. There was a very strange bit kind of to do with this character, and I suppose in the context of City of Brass it makes sense because, as I said, that was like a portal fantasy. We kind of had a little blip of a moment where we fell into another, like it was a lost island, but it was a completely different world than the world we're on. It's no island that's in existence. It's completely magical. The creatures in there are completely made up. And it just was a little bit strange. Like, I'm not 100% sure if I enjoyed that, or it just felt like a weird trip in the middle of the book because it was kind of so separate and detached from the rest of it. You just felt like you fell into it, because our character literally kind of did fall into it and fall back out of it. It kind of felt like a trip, especially because all the creatures were so out of this world on there. It was a little bit like you were high reading it. Obviously you're not, and it kind of was. It does make sense that she would likes, as a writing style of Chakraborty's, to add these portals into there, but I'm not sure if I was 100% sold this time around. It was a bit strange. You're just reading it like thinking like, what the heck is going on here? Like, why am I here? So overall, I wasn't a huge fan of the magic. It was a huge part of the plot as well, which is why I think I didn't enjoy it. I'm not going to go into that, obviously, because that's going to be quite a big spoiler of how it kind of worked with the plot. But I just wasn't, just not a fan of how I just didn't click with it. I just didn't click with this book. And I'm trying to explain why. But I feel like a lot of the reasons I didn't click with it aren't necessarily reasons that other people will dislike it. I think it was very personal to me. Although having said that, I did read this with a friend. And whilst we both, like, it is an enjoyable book, it wasn't like a slog to get through. We did enjoy it. We were just both left feeling very underwhelmed when we came out the other side. I expected it to be better, and I really, really wanted it to be. It just didn't live up to my expectations. I didn't connect with the characters as much as I did with the City of Brass, which I think was my favourite thing about it, was the characters and the character relationships, and those didn't have that same kind of draw to me this book, which is why I think I then felt the plot was a little bit slow, didn't enjoy the magic. All these other things kind of then piled on top of each other because I didn't have a love for the character, which is I am a character person. So without that character kind of connection, it just lost all ability to keep me positive about reading this book, is what I think it was. And then that kind of just led me negatively down it. I did end up giving it a 3-star, so I didn't give it a bad review. I would still recommend it to people who were wanting a pirate book. So I do think there are a lot of good things about this book and things that people will enjoy. Just for me, it didn't hit the mark. So I'm really sorry to say that. I do hope people will still give it a go, especially if they like the David Bad trilogy, because I do think people will like it as much, and I'm sure people will love Amina more than I did. I don't know what it was about her that just didn't connect with me, but we just didn't. We just weren't meant to be as character and reader. That is my review. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, or it left you with something that you want to take away from it. Do let me know if you're planning on reading this or if you've already read it, and let me know your own thoughts down in the comments below. Be very interested to know what you thought of this book and what you thought of Amina. Please do like and subscribe to see future videos and reviews, and I will see you in the next video next Sunday.